Welcome to the Project Umbrella Red podcast.
What's up, everybody? My name is Reen, and we are back with another Project Umbrella Red podcast. This is more of a get-to-know-us episode. We have some general questions that we'll be asking each other, along with a few questions from our Discord members. Joining us for today's episode is BSAArklay.
Hello? Hate these bloody automated...
You think you're talking to a machine, but
it's
you're not.
It's telling me I'm not talking to a machine. It's remarkable,
I'm
the
not
technology
a
these
machine.
days.
Hi, good to be here again.
Newsbot.
Hi. Oh wait. Excuse me a moment. Change voice. Human. Select language. Irish. Change complete.
Yep, I'm here.
Evil Resident.
Yes, over here. Hi. According to the gas chromatograph, the secret ingredient is... love! Who's been screwing with this thing?
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Perfect. USSCommand.
It's so nice to live, so good about live, so good about Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Howdy.
And the wonderful Nora.
Hello from the other side.
So, without further ado, let's dive in. Question 1. Tell us about your introduction to Resident Evil. Things like, what was the first game you played? Do you recall when you played it? Were you hooked immediately? What was it that you enjoyed the most? Who wants it?
I can go.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Evil Resident, by the way. I started the series with toys, actually, in that I didn't know what Resident Evil was, but I loved monsters and horror, and I'd collect anything I could find. And I ended up having one for the Ivy, the Tyrant, and Zombie and Hunter for the first game. Ivy from the second game. But my mom got me a Nintendo DS game because she saw it had monsters on the front, and I noticed it had the toys that I had on it. It was deadly silent, and I got to the first zombie and became too scared and didn't touch it again. Later, I got Resident Evil 5, and after playing it, I wanted to see the context behind everything. So I went back and played through all the games. That's how it started for me.
Okay. I had a similar experience. The first Resident Evil game I played was Resident Evil 4 on PS2. I started maybe a year or so before RE5's release in 2009. I remember seeing the first RE5 trailer, the one with Chris wearing blue and shielding his eyes from the sun. And the voiceover at the time wasn't Roger Craig Smith. I remember that much. Was I hooked immediately on Resident Evil 4? No, not really. I recall being confused about the plot and the character's origins. I didn't like the controls at all. But by the time my sister and I played RE5, we were intrigued to learn more about the backstory and the characters. Thus began our backtracking to the classics. What I enjoyed the most, I didn't like the controls. I remember liking the atmosphere and the parasite-infected enemies in RE4. QTEs, though, will always be a pet peeve of mine because it feels like whenever I'm putting the controller down to take a drink, the combos decide to say, yeah, press this.
That reminds me, one thing I'd like to add is that I remember one thing that really intrigued me was in Resident Evil 5 with the Plaga and how none of the enemies seemed to be related to what I had associated with Resident Evil, like with the zombies and all the other toys I had. And so that really motivated me to want to explore the series and understand. Up to that point, I just thought it was zombies and things added on to that. So it kind of opened up my eyes to the fact that Resident Evil was so much more.
Okay, yeah, so I began with Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1 in 1996, and I just recall it being very different to everything else that was out there at that time. So it just kind of stood out to me. I was a casual gamer playing with friends and stuff. I didn't really play games on my own. So this was one of the first games that I actually played on my own because it just had a story that pulled me in. One thing that stands out to me was the mystery aspect of it. And an example of that is the garden area where you fight the Cerebus. And in the background, you can hear looping dog howling. And yeah, it just sucked me into this universe like no other game had before, where I was what's beyond this wall? like something's happening over here and I can't see it with these dog howls and stuff. And it was just really atmospheric, and yeah, it was like a great mystery to me, and I just got really enthralled into it, and I just want to explore more.
Yeah, the dog howls were a favorite of mine too. I love the sound effect.
Well, I was wanting to mention what you said about, it makes you wonder what's beyond this wall. That philosophy is why I always try to learn. If I really love a series, I will read every novel, comic, everything there is for it, because I want to know what's beyond that wall. So that's just, I don't know, it's just a comment I wanted to make on that. But beyond that, though, my first introduction to the series, I was late 3 years old, early 4 years old, and it was with Resident Evil 2 released on the N64. The only thing that really stood out for it being different was it's on the Nintendo 64, so I had all these Mario games, Yoshi's Story, things like that, and then I jumped straight into a, for the time, more realistic story. Despite my age, I didn't find anything scary but the hands coming through the window. For some reason, that really creeped me out. But nothing else in the game ever bothered me. And besides maybe a random jump scare or me just scoofing around and almost dying by my own fault, nothing's ever really scared me like that in the entire franchise for Resident Evil.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. It was more the survival aspect to me, and a bit of tension about, okay, am I going to die here? And I got planning your route and stuff. It was not so much fear of horror and stuff. It was more about fear that I'm gonna
lose 5 hours of progress.
Yeah. Exactly.
Remember to save.
I don't think I ever truly have a favorite aspect of the franchise, though. I always kind of conglomerated everything together, so that's about it, really.
And I shall read Nora's response to the introduction of Resident Evil. Quote, I first saw Resident Evil 2 in a PC gaming magazine in the early 2000s. I found it interesting, but my mom didn't really like me seeing zombies and monsters, so she actually ripped the page containing details on the elements out of the magazine. My mom was like that too, Nora. I also had a cutout image of Leon I kept in my childhood Mickey Mouse patterned wallet. Then in 2006, I got a copy of Claire's disc from a friend, and I immediately recognized the game, but didn't get too far into it because I couldn't figure out the controls. But once I did, the whole game just hooked me in with its atmosphere and the whole mystery aspect to uncover. It also heavily leaned on the point-and-click adventure elements, such as solving puzzles and using items you find along the way. I definitely enjoyed its story the most. I kept replaying the game just to experience some of the cutscenes. I was so addicted to it that one time I woke up earlier before school just to play a little in the morning.
Nora also found the mystery aspect intriguing like myself. So.
Yeah, I did like how the audio was a bit delayed when you would round a corner and a zombie would be there and you wouldn't hear it until the sound effect kicked in, like the shuffling, because I know the pixels were more prominent in the classics, so they kind of blended in. So right when you turn that corner, there's a zombie there, and it's kind of and it's oh my god, he's right there. I like that.
Yeah, it's the mystery is also in the gameplay. It's in the story, but it's also in the gameplay because, like you said, you're rounding corners and you don't know what's there.
I first started with the series around 97, 98, but I was too young to actually play, so I ended up watching my dad and older male cousins play it, and was usually just completely terrified, but I couldn't actually take myself away from it ever either. So I ended up playing through the third game, I think was the first one I completed all the way through in about 99, 2000, and then I went back through 1 and 2 and ended up completing the trilogy, and then moved on to Code Veronica and every other game that came out afterwards. For me, I can't even really articulate exactly what it is that keeps me attached to the series, but it's probably the general world and the universe it's set in. I'm not particularly a big fan of any particular characters, but the situations and circumstances they find themselves in is what really appeals to me.
Your first game was Resident Evil 3 as well?
I think so. At least all the way through. I attempted to play the first and second games before, but I would just get killed immediately.
Would you revisit RE1, 2, and 3, the classics, now?
Oh yeah, all the time. At least once a year.
Oh yeah, a little ritual. Question 2. Is Resident Evil your favorite series? How does it compare to other series you enjoy?
It used to be my favorite series around 2008 to 2010, basically pre-RE5 until about post Uncharted 2, and then Uncharted 2 just like stole the show for me then. Yeah, and that's been my favorite series since Uncharted. But what I originally loved about Resident Evil, which made it my favorite series, was the expansive world. Like I mentioned previously, about the garden and exploring beyond its walls and stuff. And then later on, when we got to Raccoon City and we got to like explore the streets and stuff, and that was like my favorite aspect of it compared to other series with like Raccoon City and stuff. Right, I just thought the streets and the city itself just stood out. It just put itself apart from everything else that was out there at that time. That's basically my answer there.
Resident Evil is definitely my favorite series. There are other series I enjoy that do certain things better, or may even come across as more competent or more cohesive or something, but no other series I know of really has the same worldview that Resident Evil has, and it sort of ticks off enough boxes in my head that nothing else can really replace it or compare to it.
You're like a big fan of Dead Rising as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. For like Dead Rising, I would say I like more than any other individual Resident Evil game, but as a whole, the universe, the kind of things that can happen in it, the supplements, everything just kind of combined creates an experience that is not replicatable in anything else.
The depth.
Like
well.
there are like things in Resident Evil that I would never see in another series, and it's like very unique, very charming, very iconic.
Yeah, no, I get that because it's like things in Resident Evil which are not in Uncharted, and it's just a bit more deep, and you can just kind of get lost in Resident Evil.
Yeah.
I would say it's definitely probably my favorite series, but I wouldn't like to say it's my only favorite series, but at this point it probably is, just based on the how long running it's been and how big a part of my life it's actually been. But I think for a time Metal Gear Solid probably was the series that trumped it for me, but around 2008 with the release of Metal Gear Solid 4, that fell quite a way off, so Resident Evil probably completely supplanted it in my mind.
Did you try Metal Gear Solid 5, Phantom Pain, in the demo for it, or no?
Yeah. I as a game, I really, really like Phantom Pain. Like the gameplay mechanics of it, I adore. Mm-hmm. But the story and the universe just isn't as interesting beyond the third game, I would say. Whereas for Resident Evil, I've never actually had that problem yet, even though I dread it every single day.
Knock on wood, somebody knock on wood.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't hit burnout by now, because most people do, especially after the amount of time and work you put in.
Yeah, I think it's just because there's always something new somehow, even though a lot of the new stuff is technically like over at least 20 years old. But it's that we still keep uncovering it. So as long as we keep having stuff to find, then we'll keep finding it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's got this longevity when we keep discovering, like you said, things which are 20 years old, but only now we're finding out about it. So it kind of keeps those old installments alive.
And the series just has never been able to be matched by anything else in like atmosphere, mood, tone, etc. for me. And I think that those particular aspects are just perfectly tuned to my personality and tastes.
I agree. Like the same with me.
When I was younger, it was definitely my favorite series. I started playing at a very, very young age. But as I grew up, it definitely fell from grace. First hit for me was I learned it was really badly translated. So I literally had to go relearn everything. And, no matter how much of a fan you are or something, to find out, like, your perception of it is wrong, it's going to take some damage, right? So that hurt it a bit. Nothing big. It kind of went down a notch. Silent Hill took its place, or maybe, Halo did or something. Either way, like, Halo, Silent Hill, Resident Evil were like always my top three. But then I always had people tell me that Resident Evil was super consistent with the Japanese stuff. Everything lines out. There's no contradictions, no errors, no nothing. Like, it's perfect. So I was like, okay, well, I'll take these people's word at it because they seem like they know what they're talking about. Then I started researching into like the lore, read all the guidebooks, all that stuff that was up on Project Umbrella and whatnot, and started seeing like, no, it's really not. It doesn't really line up. You got to pretty much rewrite and change things yourself just to make everything fit properly. My best example is the new extra scenarios in Umbrella Chronicles only works with the retellings. So if you want those to work with the remake or whatever version of Resident Evil 1 you're taking as true, you pretty much have to ignore how they present them and rewrite it yourself. And that started taking some hits on it as well, because I don't necessarily like that. I like everything being super consistent and interconnecting and really presented to you accurately. That's why I'm a big Halo fan. You know, if I read a short story in a guidebook for Halo, I know that it's got 6 fucking sequels with novellas and novels and comics and so on that show that, they care about all this stuff. And for Capcom, it's like, oh, here you go. It's here. It exists. Enjoy it if you want. That's fine. But for me, I just went with it, because I kind of get really tired of writing everything for myself in a way for me to enjoy it. You know, you can't get a true ending for the events of the mansion in any version of Resident Evil 1. You can't get like a true experience of everything that happens during Resident Evil 2. You got to kind of mix and match and do all that stuff, and got tired of it. So, it's nowhere near my favorite series anymore. Far from it. That's one of the problems with it whenever I do compare it with other franchises. Halo, super interconnected with its lore. Like Star Wars old canon was super interconnected with all its lore and stuff too. The new canon tried it, but they keep deciding like every movie tie-in stuff that was just going to contradict everything else because they don't know what the hell they were doing. They didn't plan ahead. The Elder Scrolls, they have hundreds of writers who will write for like one game, and yet it manages to be super consistent across the board. Fallout, more modern Fallout games are kind of the same way. Hundreds of writers writing all these little details for it, and everything stays super consistent. And I just wish Resident Evil did that, and it doesn't whenever you compare it, and, it kind of hurts it for that, in my opinion. And that's it. That's all I have to say about that.
I would say the series is like not quite what you see is what you get. Like the events are malleable, but the details are sort of consistent.
Yeah, I could see that.
I acknowledge that it's like, I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, that it's not as consistent or as coherent as some other series. But for me, the appeal is more, and maybe I'll get to a point where I'm just fed up with it. But to me, appeal isn't so much in how well it all fits together. Like the experience it provides is different from any other game that I could get. Like the whole idea of bioterrorism and monsters being sold as weapons and things like that.
Yeah, I get that. Resident Evil's lore, world building will always provide a very interesting canvas where I think you could tell any single story you ever want from hundreds of perspectives. Like, how would a veteran soldier deal with a biohazard? How would a sociologist deal with it? A biologist? There's so many infinite possibilities with what you could do with a Resident Evil story. But, sadly, Capcom will rather retell Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 over and over and over before they ever do something new.
That's true.
That is a good point.
Yeah, that is true, because Village does kind of feel like 3.5 ideas just regurgitated into like the newer engine or whatnot, like Dimitrescu's castle, like the castle from the 3.5, hallucinations and the dolls.
Yeah, I tend to say that they like to recycle things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nora's response to, is Resident Evil your favorite series and how does it compare to other series you enjoy? She says, there are games I like more than Resident Evil titles, but it is the only series I consistently like and follow in depth. I definitely enjoy working on content I like to research and to translate, and it satiates both of those needs. And I also find content that no one really has worked on before, even though it was in plain sight. Yeah,
it's like similar to all of us, really. It's just because we're working on the series, it gives us this longevity and depth that I keep mentioning. You can there's always something new to explore and enjoy.
And the potential is there for anything, really. Like for anything new, that either from them or from us or
and even
from Capcom.
The genres and stuff, they change, and you can have Operation Raccoon City and online shooters and stuff, or you can have drama albums or novels and comics. It's variety of things.
It's something that's a bad thing. They think Resident Evil has an identity crisis. But I actually always thought that was the strength of the series, is that it's so flexible and it can be so many different things. Even if I obviously prefer genres to other in Resident Evil, or I think that certain things were misstep, I appreciate the fact that Resident Evil is so dynamic.
It's definitely worked in his favour for AI, I would say, because it's just bringing in more crowds. But then, you are going to annoy some fans who were here for original reasons, when they've moved off in a different path. But I think that's okay to do that, especially when you want to build a series, world building and stuff as well. It's good to branch out, but it's obviously going to upset some.
Yeah, as a franchise, even though it's not as big as some others, I would say it's very comparable to Star Trek and Star Wars. just because there's just so much variety involved and a lot of different segments of fans, you could say.
I would have to say yes, Resident Evil is my favorite series, but I'm also a fan of the Siren series, Silent Hill, Devil May Cry, Witcher, and The Evil Within. Compared to those other series, Resident Evil I love for its backtracking, atmosphere, viruses, creatures, and sci-fi horror. Could I say Resident Evil is like a creature feature?
Yeah, I would say so. It's got a very X-Files sort of vibe to it at times.
Yeah, like I just learned that term recently while watching some questionable horror movies on Amazon Prime, and I was all like, yeah, Resident Evil feels like a creature feature to me. Like Siren is very different from Resident Evil. Like I think too much of one genre gets lackluster after a while. So I do like to switch things up with the other series that I like. That I loved Siren for its use of facial animations in Japanese horror. I remember playing it on the PlayStation 2 for the first time and thinking, wow, this is different, and I loved every minute of it. Silent Hill I appreciate for its psychological horror. I know there are other interpretations of this series out there, and I haven't revisited the games in a very long time. But I remember thinking Silent Hill 2 was James's personal hell, and we all have those moments. The atmosphere, I think, compares to Resident Evil's, like the dilapidated corridors and the monsters lurking around every corridor. The Evil Within holds a special place in my heart and was amazing. I feel the first one, it felt like Resident Evil 4 and Silent Hill had a love child. The plot to me at the time was fresh, unlike anything I had played in a long time. The transitions in some scenes were so smooth that I didn't realize the cutscene had ended and I had control of the character again. The game does suffer in terms of controls and frame rate, which I think the second installment did a good job of rectifying. Like, I didn't like RE4's controls when I first played it, but I didn't mind the Evil Within's controls for some reason. Like, maybe I leveled up in real life or something.
Interesting. You said Evil Within 1. Did you not like Evil Within 2?
I did not. Like, I felt like it was a family drama that wrapped up too many loose ends that I enjoyed the mystery of in the first one. Like, the first one, I think, had enough loose ends where you could interpret how you wanted to, but the Evil Within 2 really just tied up some of those loose ends, and I just did not like the route it was going. And, like, I know they tease, like, Evil Within 3, and apparently there's, like, an article out there that says the producer or the director of Evil Within 2 is working on a new game, so it could be the Evil Within 3. But, like, at the same time, like, I love the Evil Within 1. Evil Within 2 was okay. I did love the controls a lot more. They were more fluid, and the frame rate, I don't think, was as bad as the Evil Within 1. But even though I love this, like, the series Evil Within, I wouldn't want to see an Evil Within 3 because I feel like the first one was enough for me. The second one was okay, but it was like just like a family drama. Evil Within 3, I don't know, like how would they continue? I mean, I could assume how they could continue it, but at the same time, do I want to see how they continue it? Like, a part of me is like, no.
I kind of had this similar problem with it where I felt like there wasn't like a main story arc. It was all kind of, I don't know, self-isolated, like nothing to continue, like you said, into the future. Like.
Yeah, like the Evil Within 1, I loved the atmosphere. Underlying plot was fantastic. I know, like, I read a whole bunch of reviews at the time after I had played it that people were confused and they didn't understand it, and I was just like, that game was brilliant. I would just like holding it up, like look at the sky and be like, I love this game. And then like the DLC did kind of change a few things that I felt. I was like, I had some perspectives, and then the DLC kind of changed that, and I didn't want to let go of my perspectives because I enjoyed my perspectives more than what they gave us in the DLC. But at the same time, like, I accept that that is how they wanted the DLC to be, and I was like, okay.
The guy who did the DLC is the same one who did the sequel.
Oh, it's like Jonas something, starts with a J.
So I can see why if you didn't like one, you wouldn't like the other.
There were some great aspects in the DLC. Maybe it just added like a little bit more that I wasn't willing to think about at the time.
Yeah.
Like it threw like a wrench in my cog of thought, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna put that down for a while. I hated the Executioner DLC only because first-person games make me nauseous, but I really wanted to play it, so I suffered through it. But at the end, it just made me feel empty. I'm just like, I played it, but what do I do now?
Yeah, I kind of had that feeling with the whole series. I don't find myself wanting to go back and replay it. Like.
Yeah, I know you have the little question here. Do you like working on content for Resident Evil? And like, I haven't really contributed anything. But I just have to say, it's an honor to work with everyone because Project Umbrella was a well of knowledge that I would constantly visit back in the day. So to work with everyone here and be part of this group providing content to the community, it is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, it's really sad that most of these supplementals don't make it outside of Japan, you know? Like, I see it all the time with merchandise, and it's disheartening. Like, the Devil May Cry Cafe items are exclusive to Japan, and then they're overpriced on eBay if you do want to buy them overseas. And then Bethesda UK has more Evil Within merchandise than the US store. And I'm just like, man, what if I wanted something?
Yeah, it's a bit harsh on the Western fans.
I was just going to say that's something I've always been very grateful to Project Umbrella for, is that it's a very different series. Well, or more like it's a much more fleshed out, in-depth series, whereas if you didn't have access to the kinds of things that have been provided by fans over the years, it would seem very shallow and very like you play the games, that's what you get.
I always say that, if we didn't have these biohazard guides, we'd be using Brady guides and stuff as a Bible, so...
Yeah, so I'm really thankful to Project Umbrella and translators and the like to make this obscure content widely available for everyone. I personally think it's compelling to read supplementals outside of the gameverse, because if you play the gameverse, that's all that you know, and then if you expand your knowledge outside the gameverse, it makes a bigger picture. I know sometimes for me it either expands or contradicts my knowledge or my preferences, but I don't want to say if I don't take them too seriously they're more enjoyable, but it's how you interpret a series and what you want to interpret from it. And if you enjoy it for a certain aspect, you enjoy it for that aspect, and that's fun.
And I don't know what you're talking about. I have to disagree with you. You haven't done anything. You've done plenty. So you made our website amazing, and you've contributed with podcasts and editing images and other things which haven't become available yet. So yeah, you've done loads, Reen. So thank you.
Warning. Announcement detected. Now initiating Patreon Appreciation Protocol. Thank you. Shaky McCourt, William Robertson, Matt Davis, Bio Gemini, Alexei Bagarov, Emiliano Ronzani, Chris Sidwell, Ian Patrick, Overseer Fear, Beggy Begbeg. Here at Project Umbrella, we value our patrons. Thank you for your continued support. System will now shut down in 5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Moving on to question 3. What is your favorite Resident Evil game?
Resident Evil 7.
Oh God, no!
Oh my God.
I felt the energy in that one, ER.
Jesus, you scared me. It's not buzzing around, man. It's okay.
Okay, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
Welcome to the family, son.
I go with Remake, and very closely followed by RE3, then RE5, just because of the characters involved and the overall story.
Okay. Newsbot?
I would say Resident Evil 3 be overall my favorite. Partially because on its own it is like a distillation of the previous 2 games, and then just a complete refinement of their gameplay formulas. And then the other half of that would be the fact that it has a very interesting development history. And when you put it into perspective just how much constraints they were working within, it really enhances the game's image for me.
Yeah, that's a great point about the refinement of the gameplay from the previous 2 installments as well.
Something I really liked about Resident Evil 3 is that I've noticed is that at face value, the story is very, very simple. It's just Jill is trying to escape Raccoon City and something is trying to stop her. And yet it manages to be just as complex and just as deep as the other games on background elements alone. And I feel like those are sort of weaved into that very basic story in a way that's really satisfying.
I think it's a big testament to Yasuhisa Kawamura's writing abilities, to be honest, because compared to the other 2 games, it is, on the surface, apparently a more bare-bones story, but it's more like a story that's simple and with a simple objective, but the information surrounding that objective is just a deep well of information. A lot of stuff is happening in the background of the game that isn't told explicitly, especially the end section with the US Special Forces and Tyrant battle, which you only see the aftermath of, and you only get a slight hint of what the circumstances behind it were, where the US government was attempting to steal the G-Virus. You can read that in the classified photo file, but you don't really get the full picture of them trying to rescue Dr. Birkin and stuff like that.
Yeah, I also really like. I completely agree, and I also really like the whole sort of politics behind it all, and the sort of internal struggle going on at Umbrella that it emphasizes, with the different hunters being sent in from different branches, and the monitors killing each other off, or Nikolai killing off the monitors, and the U.S. government bombing the city and to try and stop Umbrella from getting G. And it's just very, there's just like a lot of behind the scenes conflict and things like that I really like.
It's very telling that Kawamura basically wrote the series Bible after free, because a lot of plot elements that have been brought up since the third game, especially in the likes of Degeneration and Infinite Darkness, were pretty much started by him for free just for its background story.
Nora's response to question 3, what is your favorite Resident Evil game? It's Resident Evil 2. It was the first and the most lasting memory. I also think it improved upon Resident Evil 1, and I think the series peaked at it. The fact that the game was done basically twice with the restart of the project definitely helped polish it.
Resident Evil 2 I think is really special too. It's one of my favorites from monster designs alone.
I actually don't think I played Resident Evil 2 more than once, the classic one. I think
Really?
I played like Resident Evil 3 like maybe 3 or 4 times. Resident Evil 2 I think just once, and then Resident Evil 1 I played like 10 plus times maybe, but like I much prefer the OG Resident Evil 2 to what we got as a remake, for the sole fact that Resident Evil 2, the classic one, felt like it had more content.
Nora says that she's played 2 like 30 times.
Good on you, Nora. That's awesome.
I really like 2 as well.
Yeah, the liquor part, I remember, basically when you get the cutscene, the blood dripping from the ceiling and you look up, that was a great enemy introduction. I was like, oh snap, something's on the ceiling, I'm gonna die.
I think it's really difficult to pick a best of between the first trilogy, to be honest, because each of them have they're each pretty distinct. So I think I always get a bit annoyed seeing people write off one or the other based on which one had which factors behind it, which gameplay elements and such. Like 3 doesn't have the zapping system, but it still has enough variety in it to keep you interested and keep you replaying it. Like the epilogue files, I remember playing it for 8 times just to get those. This was like before there was really any big Game Shark codes around for that.
Okay, so what's the zapping system?
The A-B scenario structure, where you play one character and then you play the other character's other side of that scenario, and then it works in reverse as well. The general idea is that they're linked and that one decision in one campaign affects what you can do in another campaign, but they were pretty limited in terms of actual decisions, whereas in 1 and 3, you're got a lot of very active decision making going on, just depending on which routes you take, mainly based on what route you take and like when you do certain actions.
Okay, thank you. For a long time, I've said that Code Veronica is my favorite game. Like, I love the addition of the Bandersnatch and the atmosphere, the dark labs and the isolated island, Wesker's Return. But as time passes on, I find myself constantly drawn back to the Resident Evil HD remaster. Like, I feel like it kept most of the original's charm, but added elements to keep it fresh for returning fans. Lisa Trevor was my favorite addition. Like, I remember entering the path of the woods and hearing the chains rattle and her cry echo throughout the dense forest, and I was like, damn, what now? And I loved the larger and scarier Mama Neptune. Like, the sharks in the OG were intimidating as they flopped around the drained hallways, but there is something unnerving about a large shark smashing the glass to try and eat you. Not to mention having to get into the water with her. I was like, no, please, no, I don't want to. And then I do believe I tempted fate and walked a little bit closer because I wanted to see if it was okay, and it got me. But live and learn.
That's interesting. You said the first game was Resident Evil 4, so you played Remake and RE1 after that?
Yeah, so after RE4, my sister and I played RE5, and then we were interested about what we missed because we didn't really understand what was going on. So then we bought RE1, 2, and it's like the original trilogy, and then we were like, yes, and then we went to Code Veronica, and then like, GameStop was still, I guess, a thing. I mean, I guess it still kind of is, but like it was the go-to game shop back then. And so whenever we'd go, we would look for the Resident Evil titles and sometimes go into the city if they had it in stock and not the local GameStop. So
you did the original 3, then Code, then 0 and Remake?
Yeah, it was RE4, RE5, RE1, 2, 3, Code Veronica. I didn't play much of Outbreak. It really overwhelmed me to control all the characters, and I was just like, I think I was like 2 years late to try it online on PlayStation 2, and I was just like, man, that probably would have been an experience. I liked Dead Aim. Dead Aim was after that, so like I played a little bit of Outbreak. Dead Aim, I played, then I guess that's it. No, I feel like I'm forgetting one. Hold on.
They beat Survivor.
Survivor. Okay, I have a beef to pick with that one. I did not realize it was an arcade type game. So when I died, I lost like 7 hours of my life and I was really ticked off. So I was like, I will do it again. I will beat, because I got to the end tyrant boss battle and I was like, yes. And then I was on the second wave and it killed me and I was like, no. So then I started it again. And so like another 7 hours later, I died in the exact same spot. I've got to the end, but I don't know how Survivor ends and that's really going to haunt me.
They all died.
I don't. Yeah, really? Is that
Well,
spoiler warning?
Nope, that the boss kills you, then it kills Lot and Lily, and then it ends.
Are you? See, I'm a gullible person, ER. If you tell me that's how it ends,
I'm lying. I'm lying.
Are you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, maybe I should revisit it because I did like choosing the different paths, and I can't remember like if I chose anything different the second time I played it. But all I remember Survivor as is that game that got away. I never got to the ending.
I don't really have a favorite because it depends on my mood. My top 5 favorites of the franchise is like ORC, Resident Evil 5, Survivor, Dead Aim, and I will always bundle the Outbreak games as one thing. So my favorite would always depend on what I'm really in the mood for, just how I'm feeling. I have a lot of emotional attachment to Dead Aim. It helped me through my first suicide attempt. So I kind of really have, a good place for that when I'm depressed. But, I'm a big story first person, so RE5. But then, I do love those underdog things where, the game went through freaking developmental hell and it's lucky we even got a game at all and, therefore, ORC. And then, so, it just really will always depend for that type of thing.
So, question 4. Do you have a least favorite Resident Evil game?
Resident Evil 7.
All right, you piece of shit! I've had about enough of you! All you have to do is accept her fucking gift!
I know there's like other games in the series which are clearly subpar in terms of like mechanics and visuals and stuff, but it's just as a main title, yeah, I enjoy it the least. But I can see like its value and stuff. I'm not saying it's an awful game. It's just not for me. Like.
I like all of them, so don't take what I'm about to say to heart, but Dead Aim. I know.
My heart broke in two.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's mainly just because I'm not a big fan of the monsters in that game, and gameplay-wise, it gets really repetitive. But otherwise, I do like it.
For me, probably 0 would be my least favorite, because just in general, it's in terms of both gameplay, presentation, and story, to me, it's just the least interesting. Like, whenever I think of the series, 0 just doesn't really come to mind unless I'm deliberately thinking of it. Compared to the other games, it's just a bit slower for me. It's not as... the pacing's just off, so it does, compared to the other games, it just doesn't feel right to me. I can't really explain it very well, but it also, because it was originally meant to be a Nintendo 64 game, it is very obviously a game that was made in 98 or 99, just transplanted into 2003. So for me, that drags it back a little bit compared to the rest. Like, at least the other games are, you could call them cutting edge, just because they were made and designed for the time periods where they were released generally, whereas 0 is more of a hangover from a previous generation.
Yeah, I often wonder about 0. Would it have been better as an N64 game? Would it have been received better, really?
Nora's least favorite Resident Evil game is the Gun Survivor games, especially Gun Survivor 1 and Gun Survivor 4. Nora says they are awkward and a pain to play. I still find these stories to be relevant and important, but gameplay-wise, they are a low point in my eyes. Which one's Gun Survivor 4? Okay.
Not allowed for Dead
Back
Aim.
to Dead Aim. That's okay.
For Dead Aim, I just love making Bruce walk around with his gun raised.
Yeah, me too. It makes me feel like a headshot champion. I'm just like, pew, pew, pew. I do remember it did take a little bit, though, to get used to third person and then going to first person to fire a weapon.
I think that it's plenty atmospheric at parts. And I love the lore behind the locations and like the Spencer Rain and a lot of the ideas present. Like I said, I don't dislike it. Yeah.
I'm quite surprised Nora didn't like the Survivor games, but didn't list Gun Survivor 2.
Which one's Gun Survivor 2?
It's called Veronica.
It's like an arcade remake.
Yeah, the arcade one.
Oh, okay, the original one. Okay, yeah. Wasn't Nemesis also present on the island or something like that?
Yeah. Nora says she thinks it's more balanced.
Okay, what about your least favorite Resident Evil game?
The Mercenaries 3D.
No!
I don't like that game type. and I literally only bought it because I wanted to play that Rev demo. And I mean, I played through it and beat it, and then said, now play the EX levels. I'm like, well, fuck this shit. It's like, that when you play one of those old games, like, oh, you got gold on every level. Now try for platinum. I'm like, no. You can suck a dick. I'm not doing this again.
That's how I felt for Death Stranding. I was really anal about getting S's on all those missions because that's what they basically were. I spent 80 plus hours getting missions from like the first couple areas, and then I got to like chapter 3, and then it says hard mode is now unlocked. Go back and do them all for S's, and I'm just like, so like I haven't touched Death Stranding.
Well, now with that director's cut, you don't really have to deal with that no more, right?
Well,
you get to do it all over again with that more stuff to do.
No, thank you. I'm not going to revisit Death Stranding for a long while because like I know Nora enjoyed it, and I can understand that some people will enjoy it, but I don't think this game was for me. It was a walking simulator.
I enjoyed the story, but I wouldn't play this if my life depended on it.
Maybe I made it harder on myself, but like the game gave me a bike, so I decided to ride it off a cliff. Because it had this lovely arc, and I was just like, this will be the best jump ever, and I broke the bike. And then they don't give you a new bike until chapter 3, so I had to walk. So
well,
it really
what they say about women and driving, right?
Oh.
God. My least favorite Resident Evil game would have to be Resistance or the RE-verse beta, because I just don't like PvP games. Like, these two modes to me feel more like just reused assets and maps just pushed out to make a quick buck. I can see the appeal for Call of Duty fans in the running and gunning type, but it's just mindless slaughter to me. I much prefer PvE, where you have to work together to survive, like Operation Raccoon City. There was something charming about that game's map, ignoring the underlying plot of where you can either save or kill Leon. I think the studio really captured Raccoon City at its worst. The destroyed city, the overrun streets with BOWs and zombies, and the fact that you can betray your comrades at the end, which is a common theme in Resident Evil Betrayal. But if you ask me what was my least favorite game before these two modes even existed, I would have to say Umbrella Corps. But I was talking to a friend a while ago about Umbrella Corps and its plot, and the more I was talking about it, the more I felt that the story behind Umbrella Corps wasn't all that bad. Like, the repetitious gameplay and the experiment didn't do the game any justice, but the details and the text when you laid over the level descriptions made for an interesting story. Like the aspect of Wesker being alive, Abraham disappearing after he collected a hair follicle to run through their DNA archives. I love the sound of that. And I feel like if it wasn't PvP, I may have enjoyed it, but the only reason why I bought Umbrella Corps was because I heard that Wesker may or may not have an appearance in it, and I was just like, okay, I'm gullible. I felt like I ripped up a $10 bill afterwards, but I was just like, I had to know.
Yeah, I agree in that I think I've never actually played Umbrella Corps. It's not the type of game for me, but I really like a lot of the world building it does and what it adds to the universe. And like the whole idea that outbreak zones are getting too big and too widespread, so the BSAA just has to quarantine them off, and then that allows new groups to come in and take more viruses.
I enjoyed that aspect of it, and like because it was a PvP game, I was easy pickings for those people actually going in to play the game. But I was like, oh, look at these textures. This is Kijuju. Like, after the BSA put up these barricades to keep everything else inside, I'm like, oh, Tri-Cell headquarters, and I get killed, and then I have to sit in that 3-minute match until you go to the next one. Then I'm like, well, can I explore the textures, please?
Yeah.
But like, it's PvP games just aren't for me. So my least favorite games right now, I would have to say, are Resistance or RE-verse beta, just because I don't like PvP games.
I definitely agree with the Resistance thing. Like, you can do a tutorial mode and just explore the maps, and there is so much details and lore in the textures that, you can actually read them. Like, in the amuse park map, you can see all the fucking shifts that every freaking person was going to work that night. And, it's like fully textured and detailed. It's readable on like, 2 and 3, most of 2 and 3 remakes textures. And, you hear and read about like, they originally wanted the game to be more like a Resident Evil Outbreak, spiritual sequence. Like, yeah, it's pretty shitty what they gave us. Plus, you can't play it offline, so the game's going to die eventually, because the only people who play it are like level like 300s who spent $5 million on the game to have every unlockable, and the only thing they do is dance. So you can't really immerse yourself into it anyway.
Okay, wait, as somebody who really likes cosmetics, like, I can see the appeal of costumes and dance emotes, because I did buy the deluxe edition for Umbrella Corps for some of those costume colors or whatever else came in that deluxe edition. Because, I'm a sucker for colors.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely all for, cosmetics and stuff, different costumes and stuff, because, different costumes can also add lore. Like Chris's heavy metal outfit in RE5 has a backstory. It's prototype power armor. But, like, or, maybe you get an idea
which
what...
we see in 7, too.
Yeah.
So
which,
kind of continuity continuity there.
Yeah, but and plus, those costumes could potentially give an idea of what a character might like or dislike, when it comes to their taste, because every special costume in the Outbreak game is kind of related to the main characters, not counting NPC quote costumes unquote. But yeah, it's like Resistance now. Its multiplayer is literally like rows of dancing zombies. You can't really do anything story wise with it besides unless you just want to, dance.
Dancing is fun. Yeah, I used to play Metal Gear Online, and there were just some servers where it was like no kill. And so everyone would just go in and do the emotes and just say like, thanks, good job, show them how it's done and stuff like that. And it was entertaining. And then when somebody fired a gun, they would be kicked from the server because it was just for people who wanted to stand around and dance and say all the voice emotes. But that was what I did for Umbrella Corps. I bought the Chris skin because I wanted to play as Chris and not just some faceless soldier. But I can see how costumes are tempting. Maybe I just don't like it for Resistance because it's kind of locked behind a paywall. Yeah. Because I've seen some people spend 7 million points and they just got, I don't even know what stickers or voice lines instead of emotes. I would be so livid.
Yeah, there's a reason why I don't play it outside tutorial mode.
I basically don't play anything with loot boxes or anything like that.
Yeah, I do have something to say about one aspect of Resistance later, but I'll save that for another question.
Yeah, I haven't played either of them, so...
Question number 5. Do you have a favorite character, BOW, or perhaps an organization or other?
I just say my favorite monster would be, I love all of them almost, but my favorite would be G. Birkin, because I feel like he's kind of like the epitome, like the peak of body horror, and the fact that each form is, like if you take Form 1 and Form 2, and then Form 3 and Form 4, you can see the line of progression. But if you skip just one form, it looks like a completely different monster. That's ideal. That's no other design has ever really encapsulated that. And in regards to characters, I'm not a big character fan, but I like all the villains and a lot of the more recent characters in 7 and 8. And my favorite organization is Umbrella.
Which Umbrella? There's 5 of them now.
The red one, I guess, blue one.
So everything under the umbrella.
Yeah. Okay, so I've always liked Jill Valentine. Again, coming back to this mystery aspect, which we don't really know an awful lot about her. So yeah, I'm kind of into the unknown, I guess. And I always just wanted to know more about her, but we never really got it beyond her career and stuff. So fingers crossed, maybe in the future. I also really like Lupo from Operation Raccoon City. I think she's got one of the best and most tragic character backgrounds in the entire series. So as soon as I read her bio, I was really interested in her character.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, speaking of the, jail bio stuff, that's one of the reasons why I like looking at all the non-chronological or alternate universe stuff. If you want to know about anything that could fit with what Jill's, with the Jill profile, Perry novel explains she's close to her dad, who came from a criminal family, and he's in prison, and he wanted her to become a law enforcement so she wouldn't waste her life. Then if you look at Anderson movies lore, it mentions that she's really close to her uncle at the same time. And he left her a big house and a big fancy sports car when he died. So, you could always take stuff like that if you had nothing else to try to fatten up her bio stuff.
That's why I want to do one comprehensive bio one day where it just takes everything canon and non-canon, just put it into one category, and so you end up with, you might get a full character there.
I'd say you probably could get a full character easily, because the Apocalypse novelization, at the very least, that brings up her uncle and stuff, it acknowledges the backstory from the Perry novels as chronological to it. So, there's be some lining up there,
links to
at the very least.
Bio 1 info as well, where she was close to her relatives and stuff. And
Extinction novel too. Rodney hasn't read that one yet, but
no.
Nora's favorite character BOW, or perhaps an organization, she says, I like stars in general. All characters are unique and interesting, and even though we have many side characters over the years, they became less and less fleshed out. As for BOWs, anything that leans into body horror, such as Birkin or the Revenants from Revelations 2. What about Newsbot? Does Newsbot want to add? Do you have a favorite character, BOW?
No, he don't.
Okay.
For character, I don't really have particular likes for any of them. When I was younger, I did like Chris a lot, but that was mostly because I just had a thing for the whole hero thing, especially the opening scene for his part of Code Veronica really appealed to me as a kid. But nowadays, it's more like a bit cheesy.
Yeah.
But these days, I would probably say that I like Leon as a character more, primarily because he's a lot more conflicted, even though they haven't really gone into as much detail about this part of the story. Like the fact that he is a government agent who is only an agent because he and a little girl are a hostage. That just appeals to me a lot more from a character point of view. And he's technically on the bad side because the government are involved with Umbrella and such and want to make their own bioweapons. But he at the same time sees them as the only chance he has to actually fight BOWs and such. So he's stuck in between a rock and a hard place. And I think Infinite Darkness tried to cover this, but sort of fell a bit flat towards the end, where he is genuinely conflicted, but is between a rock and a hard place and has no real other choice. For BOWs, my favorite would probably have to be Nemesis. The lore behind it just appeals to me on just a very deep level. Because it's not quite like a tyrant, which is like an evolved human, or a G creature, which is like a whole new species. It's sort of a mesh of the two, where a new species has been implanted into the evolved one, and it creates just this completely horrifying but also completely formidable creature.
And I've never been able to get him right since, not even his voice.
I mean, we can all agree that Umbrella Chronicles had the best Nemesis voice.
I'd like to add to that. I think that that's something a lot of people really overlook with Nemesis, is that he's not a human that has retained his intelligence. He's a new form of intelligence. Kind of like the same premise behind like an AI or something, but with a parasite. And I think it's really neat, the idea that he's cloned, he's a sort of a blank slate of a human, and then another creature is puppeting it and has developed an intelligence. It's kind of like a Planet of the Apes kind of scenario, where it's entirely and completely alien and new. And I really like that.
Which Planet of the Apes?
I guess the new one. Really.
Trash.
Just the idea of something gaining sentience in a lab that's not human, or didn't start from a human, and then sort of and they kind of hinted that in the guidebook, where it says that if Nemesis ever got out, and maybe if it learned to breed or something, then it could potentially usurp control of the planet, and take out the human race, because it's like it has emotion, it has intelligence, it can adapt, it can think, it could potentially become on par with or greater than a human being. And I just think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite guidebook bits. That Nemesis model that gained conscious and they had to kill it.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite organization, Newsbar?
I'm gonna have to say it is Umbrella's rival company, just because of sheer mystery. It has been the number one burning question for me since Code Veronica. So to finally get it some sort of answer to it with the World Xenobiological Corporation name is just wonderful. I keep trying to pinch myself to just remind myself that it actually has a name now, at least one that we can use.
Yeah, it didn't seem like we were ever going to get that.
And to find out that there was a name that far back as well, just even before the game's release, is just, it's mind blowing. Because we never would have really considered that.
Yeah, I remember older PU podcasts, from way back in the day. I remember you and others saying that you think that they've never had a name, or if they had a name, it's been long lost to time and all that. So it is nice to see it, be a thing.
And it probably has been lost. That the page we have of it is probably the only existing thing, and it's probably only been in one developer's hands. But hopefully they still have something of it.
Yeah. Well, if us using it does anything, it might make them use it, because the thing with G-Virus, Goliath, or what the hell it stands
Golgotha,
for.
yeah.
Golgotha, yeah. That really wasn't used until, Crimson Head Elder put it out there back in the day. So, then it started getting used in magazines and stuff. So, there's hope it be used.
Yeah, it started getting used on the wiki, and then magazines and online press.
I was going to say that's probably the closest comparable thing to learning a rival org's name is learning that G is for Golgotha. Nora adds that it's funny that the name Golgotha was always right in front of us in Archives 1. No one just was able to translate it, or they didn't put two and two together.
Go ahead, Rodney.
Oh, yeah, you did.
My favorite character is Vladimir Vovosky. Whenever I have read his Spectre, if no one knows his name outside of our work.
Thank you. I was about to be
reading his, back when I inserted Evil, the ARG for ORC was, coming out, and I was actually actively part of its community playing it. Reading his backstory, I felt like a connection to him, because I'm not an attractive person. I'm not a person that really sticks out of anything, and it's so easy for me to blend into crowds. I I do it, like, I practice it just for the hell of it. Like, I see relatives who are very fond of me walk by me, and I could just stand in a certain way and just, they'll never know who I am. They don't recognize me at all. So, like, when his backstory explained how he just blends in so well, I'm like, this is actually a character I really relate with for once. I mean, I don't like watching people have sex like he does. But I mean, everybody's got their own little kinks, so it's whatever. But yeah, it was one of the few characters in Resident Evil I could actually say I felt like a personal connection with.
Yeah, who was the one that said he was a
favorite?
Was Adam Bullied, was it?
That guy and Santos confirmed it in the Crimson Head Elder podcast. My favorite BOW will always be the Undertakers, because it should have been like the perfect BOW by far, because the Undertaker commander had to specifically tell them, kill everybody, even our own people, even the elderly and children. Don't leave anyone alive. So that means they know how to tell friend or foe. That means they know how to identify who to save and who to kill. So they have they have an intelligence. And they could have explored those creatures in depth in a lot more games. They could have easily been taken the place of the Joabo, because Joabo they only have one order, and that's the only order they will ever have. Where the Undertakers can take multiple orders and have orders change, and they can think for themselves and all that stuff. Like, they're literally the perfect BOWs. And, like, yeah, they're kind of elongated arms and legs, and they sound like a tiger, bastardized baby mixed with a chimpanzee. But, like, when they're in their uniforms and they're running around, you could easily almost pass them off as a spec ops soldier or something, from a distance. So it's the perfect BOW. They can use weapons, they can use guns. They could probably use vehicles too. I mean, just by, the logic of that. So you really wouldn't need tyrants or anything. So they're perfect. They only ever used once.
I agree. I think they're really great. I think they hold I think they perform a role that's really cool and very specialized, in that they're cheap, they melt when they die.
They're just practical, aren't they?
Yeah, but one thing I'll say that kind of keeps them from, like, supplanting the tyrant or other creatures is that I feel like they're not really strong, and you could debate, I don't think they're really that much more durable than a human being. When one of the, like, major goals of the entire BOW project was creating creatures that kind of make conventional weapons obsolete.
I get that, but, like, I mean, that's definitely, you could argue, might be a gameplay, because, I mean, they die in, like, one shot in Survivor, but you can kill a tyrant with 5 handgun bullets, and you fight, like, 20 in that game. So there's definitely some debate you can make, but, yeah, I get with that, that idea. Like I said, if they were explored more, they could have done so much with them.
The thing with me is, yeah, I agree that it's always a question of interpretation as to how much you take gameplay seriously. But I actually like that aspect about them, because to me it makes them have they fit better. I just like the idea that Umbrella came up, in order to fight off BOWs, they made something really, really cheap and really expendable. And that they sacrifice being the ultimate weapon in favor of being intelligent and able to follow orders. Because Umbrella at that point was really having a hard time balancing all of those things.
I think my only issue is why wouldn't they send them into, like, Raccoon City and stuff?
I think that they were made after that.
Yeah, I assume they were made just because they lost quite a lot of the USS and UBCS personnel in Raccoon City. That might actually be why they're not very durable and stuff, because they were probably made in a very short time. They're just to, like, fill lost human resources, really.
That's cool.
Yeah. So they're probably like a stopgap between Wilson's super soldiers. Those are probably like the idealized version of them.
Yeah. And just to, make a note of it, like, I think the UBCS lost like 250 some people in Raccoon City. I can't remember the number specifically, but I know if you do like a count from all the different games that are set in Raccoon City, the USS counts like 150 or something like that. Because there's like 100 of them in the Confidential Report games, for example. So they definitely had a lot of casualties from Umbrella's staff in general.
And that's the thing, you could even see, like, with the BSAA and everything, is that fighting BOWs always comes at a huge cost of human life, because they render modern warfare obsolete. They're made specifically to kill humans. And the characters we see kill a whole bunch of BOWs, like Chris and Leon, they're like in a very, very small minority. And so the idea that they made a BOW that's made for the purpose of being expendable, I think, is really neat. Like, the whole, in order to replace humans.
Did you have a favorite organization, Rod?
Really hard, I guess, to actually pick an organization. So, I can't say Tricell, because I know that's like a ball that they dropped. Yeah. So
I feel the same.
The Project Elios organization. There we go. I'm pretty sure no one here knows what that is.
I can't remember what campaign it was?
Project Helios is the No Hope. It's from the No Hope Left ARG for Resident Evil 6. They were taking advantage of how widespread the C virus was and how much panic it was. And they almost did like a vault tech thing from Fallout. They were making vaults to allow people to hide from this coming apocalypse. But in reality, they were actually just looking for specific genetics so they can make BOWs. The ARG never really addresses what they did with the data. But if you won the ARG, they actually gave you a full uniform of what Project Helios employees wore. And they gave a suitcase full of documents explaining everything, but no one's came forth with those documents.
Yeah, I kind of had a theory about it, remember, that they were the family, and that's that they were looking for Jake.
Yeah, I remember that. Oddly enough, the press kit of Resident Evil 6, of all things, is like a little container that belonged to somebody who went with his family into one of those Project Helios vaults. And I think it's just such a weird thing to do because how many, game reviewers are going to know about the ARG or even know what these, items are even worth,
They got all the good shit. And they sell it on eBay.
Yeah. Yeah, for like $500 plus dollars. But yeah, that'd be my favorite organization. Very well unknown, and it's just got it's that type of thing where it gives a good mystery that makes my mind wander because it's very vague, but it's still grounded and explained enough to make you get the idea. And it works so well. You have a global pandemic. You could do almost anything if you have the right, resources and enough fear mongering to make people do stuff.
The mysteries are like a big part of the appeal.
Yeah.
My favorite BOW would have to be between the OG Tyrant or the OG Nemesis. Like, I love the Tyrant's sallow complexion, his milky eyes, ugly veins, and discolored claws. And his height was really imposing. And to have to take him down in a small space of the lab, dodge and survive, it's something to remember. The classic Nemesis, he got me good a few times. The most notable was I was entering a door which led to one of the many burning streets of Raccoon. I blinked and then I saw the guy bulldozing me into stars. I was like, what? And then I died. It happened too fast and I was like, okay, sure. I accepted that death and had to start over from my last save, but it was memorable. Question number 6. Do you have a favorite soundtrack that stands out from the rest?
Yeah, I'll answer this first because I've already mentioned it before. Dead Aim soundtrack. I went through a very hard time and I couldn't get the intro theme specifically out of my head from looping. So as I'm, here wanting to die, I just kept listening to it. So it's something that will always be very emotionally attached to me. I love Dead Aim's soundtrack.
Is that the one Raj sung himself?
He made it, but the intro itself doesn't have the lyrics. But he still made it, yeah.
I don't remember much of Dead Aim's soundtrack, so maybe I'll revisit the game and just listen to that opening theme song. That would it be the title screen music?
Yeah, the little main menu thing where it says creating a world where beauty has absolute rule.
Morpheus, yes, okay, I got you. Listen to that next time.
This is one of the tougher questions for me because I got
bad taste.
Good one. Yep, that was a good one.
From each soundtrack, I've got particular favorites, but I just had to go with the original because it's just got so many nostalgic tracks in there. It's I couldn't pick one, so I just went with the original, or maybe 5 because there's a lot of tracks. My favorite track is in 5, so yeah, one of those two.
Okay, which one in 5? Because I have my favorite soundtrack. Maybe I misunderstood the question. I only picked 2 songs from a soundtrack.
That's okay. You can pick.
So I Rust in the Summer 2008 and Winds of Madness from Resident Evil 5. Those are my 2 favorite OSTs.
Yeah,
and I'm
that Rust one slaps.
Oh, it does.
The goat.
And then Winds of Madness, I think I died a few times when the theme's orchestra kicked in during Wesker's fight. I was like, hey, this is good. And then bam, he either shot me or set me into dying mode after using that sweeping kick that sounds like someone sharpening a knife. Those 2 are probably the most memorable soundtracks.
The soundtrack for 5 because they've kind of screwed up Wind of Madness in that. They did a digital version and it doesn't sound anywhere near as good.
I don't have the soundtrack. So physical copy in the game or in the soundtrack?
Yeah, physically buy the soundtrack on CD discs. They got digital versions for the main theme and Wind of Madness and a couple of others, and it doesn't sound very good.
Okay.
I've found that same thing's kind of true for Survivor. Like, I don't think it had a official soundtrack release, but if you go look up like fan rips and stuff, the music sounds kind of shitty compared to how good it sounds in game.
Nora says, overall, I prefer soundtracks of early games that feel invasive and tense almost all the time, something that became more of a background element in recent games. Oh, and Nora also adds the Pachi games also have some banger J-Rock.
Yeah,
And she says,
I love Remake Patchy Slot soundtrack. I actually have that. I did. I bought it digitally. I don't know what if it's on anything left I have, but yeah, I loved it.
From 1 to Code Veronica, all of them.
That's what I wanted to say.
No, sorry,
But,
speaking
if I had to pick, it would be free. It's just so much. It's like a desolate atmosphere.
Speaking of Code Veronica, I'm not sure if it's like a porting issue or something, but I know when my sister and I were playing Code Veronica on PlayStation 4, there was this weird sound effect that when we walked outside the Alfred Palace, there was this weird little and like, I don't know if there should have been music there and it was like caught in a loop or something, but that is like my favorite sound effect in Code Veronica. Now I'm just like, there it is.
A bug against a lamp you're hearing.
Okay, thank you. At least it's something. I was like, I'm going to see what is that sound effect.
Because it's in other stuff, and it's like I've seen it in anime and stuff, and it's usually like a moth wanting to get into a glass lamp.
All right, well, that is the best sound effect in Code Veronica. That I'm just like, it's there. I know it's there, and I thought it was the music glitching, but I'm just like, I love it.
So my favorite music, I think Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica are really stand out, and they're popular for a reason. But I also
holy shit, you didn't say Resident Evil 7 and 8?
You didn't let me finish. I was going to say that Resident Evil 7 is very underappreciated.
Well, if it was in the game and you could hear it, maybe it'd be appreciated.
Quiet. Wear headphones. Quiet. I was going to say that it's not like the other games. It's more of like a traditional horror soundtrack where like it's not the kind of thing you'd want to listen to on your own, like outside of the game, but it really amps up a lot of the tension, like the whispers in the background and everything are really ominous. But I was also going to say I like a lot of the vocal songs.
Yeah, I agree with that. Not just like in general, vocal songs, like any songs that have vocals in the Resident Evil franchise have always been really bangers. Like the vocal woman song in ORC, for example, is amazing. Like they always knew how to do their vocal stuff.
Nora says, Remember from the Village is really good. It plays during the scene with Evelyn.
Others vocal songs I really liked would be like Pray from Resident Evil 5. There's, going way back, Alexia's Lullaby.
That one is really good.
Manuela's Lullaby is good too. Sleeping Beauty it's called, I think. And I know some people are irritated by it, but I like Go Tell Aunt Rhody. And then Resident Evil 8's vocal song at the end is ominous. I like it.
I much prefer the Japanese version of the Go Tell Aunt Rhody song. I feel like it fits a little bit, to me, it fits a little bit better because it feels like Evelyn's perspective instead of Go Tell Aunt Rhody just being a nursery rhyme that is just been, I'll use this word, molded to fit. Yeah, I prefer the Japanese version to the English version because Go Tell Aunt Rhody just feels like a nursery rhyme where the Japanese version of Go Tell Aunt Rhody feels like it has a little more meaning.
Yeah, Nora agrees with you. I like both. I just like it.
Is the Japanese version also a nursery rhyme, Nora? I did not know that.
Yeah, it's. I remember reading an interview that they picked that song in particular because the same tune exists in both English and Japanese, so it was easy to just make different songs with the same music.
Okay, well, I prefer the Japanese lyrics to the English one because I'm like, who's Aunt Rhody? Is it Evelyn's grandmother?
Yeah. I had the same experience. I remember after playing through 7 and getting all the achievements for the base game, and I missed out on this old Crimson Head Elder podcast for it because I couldn't connect. But I remember after everything was said and done, everything died down, I was going to bed. And I was listening to that song because I actually like it. It was actually really good because, it's the only fucking song that plays in RE7. And as I'm about to go to sleep, it hits me. Who the fuck is Aunt Rhody? So I jump it up and go to the Crimson Head Elder staff chat. I was like, guys, who the fuck is Aunt Rhody?
It's funny to me because it didn't really bother me because I know of the song that it's referencing. So I feel like to people who don't know that, it's probably going to be a lot more like you're looking for something that's not really there.
Yeah.
I remember
all I was going to say is that my explanation for it is that was a song Evelyn heard maybe from Mia or something because she hums it in game. And so it's sort of like the reason it keeps the Go Talent Roadie part is because it is a song that Evelyn knows and is special to her. And so she's just, it's just sort of like changing every other lyric to fit Evelyn. So it's kind of like a corruption of something that already exists, something already that's meant for children, which I think is a good representation of Seven as a whole, where it's like a family that's been corrupted or a child that's been turned into a weapon. So I think that it just fits that way.
Mm-hmm. Going back to what Rodney was saying, like when the trailer for Resident Evil 7 dropped, like my sister and I did like a whole bunch of research on the Rhodey song. We were like, what does it mean in this culture, in this culture, in this culture? And like we spent like 7 hours after the trailer had dropped to try to find some meaning in the Aunt Rhodey song, and it was just kind of there in the game, and I was like, okay. But I will say that was there a wheel, like a water wheel or something involved in the song? I can't remember now.
I don't even remember. In my mind, the song has permanently been replaced with the Resident Evil version at this point because I've heard it so much.
Okay, and it was the Aunt Rhodey, she died in the mill pond, and so my sister and I were like theorizing that hey, it would be interesting to see like a water mill or something like that in the Resident Evil game. But when we were playing Resident Evil Village, it was nice to see there was like a water mill in Moreau's area. So we were kind of like, oh, maybe that carried over from Aunt Rhodey, or maybe not. It was just there as a map area, but it was. I liked Moreau's area the most in Village.
They used to have a windmill in the Baker farm, but when they were researching it, they found out that there aren't any in Louisiana, apparently. So they had to cut it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to go. It's a bit
okay.
Anomaly detected. System news bot version 00001.6 deactivating. Self-destruct sequence has been activated.
There are only 5 Project Umbrella RE Digest staff members left now. We don't know where Newsbot is.
Is there any storyline, past or current, that you feel should have played out differently?
Be very careful.
Yep, I'm walking on glass for this one. I'll read Nora's, actually. Nora says, I wish Zero would have explored something more grounded and more closer to the events of RE1. There were many areas cut from the game due to time constraints that could have been reused for Zero's events. I wanted more of Bravo and something that's more intimately connected to 1.
I might as well put mine after that because mine is pretty much just that, but a bit less.
Okay, I'll skip this one.
No, mine is the same as that one.
Okay.
I would have liked to see more Bravo. I don't think Billy was really no offense to any Billy fans. I just don't think that it really had anything to do with the setup to the story of 1, and it could have easily have been like a sequel or like any other side game.
Yeah, so I'm going to go 3 in a row, and agree. It might surprise everyone, but yeah, I'd also say 0. There's many things I'd like to see differently. I try not to dwell on things like this, but I think it's okay to discuss what we might have expected or wanted to see. But one that stands out to me is, I wanted to see more Bravo team in 0.
I think that it's a good prequel to the whole idea of the T-virus and like Wesker and Birkin at the training facility and stuff. So I think the setting and even the monsters have a good reason for being there, but the characters themselves are just kind of like Billy's just kind of exists because he exists. Like he could have been in any other game.
Nora wants to add 0 isn't really a prequel to 1, but rather explores the history of the virus.
Yeah, which I think,
so
like,
pretty much
agree
with me.
As like pretty well anyway. So like, I don't know. I feel like you could just kind of remove it, and like we wouldn't miss a lot. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
See, my sister, she really likes 0, and I like the atmosphere in 0, but I do feel I would have liked to see a little bit more of Bravo than what we got. Like, it feels really abrupt in the one cutscene where Rebecca is walking towards that elevator, or it was a door or something, and Rico walks out and he's all like, Rebecca, be careful, and then it's just like a monologue in the head, and I never saw him again, and I'm just like, okay, bye, Enrico, we know what happens to you.
I like that. But yeah, I do like the game, and I like the way, like, I like Marcus, and the Queen Leech could have been portrayed a little better, but I like the ideas behind it, and like the proto-tyrant, and there are even more details I like in it than, say, Dead Aim, like background elements, but I do think that, like, overall presentation and stuff is just kind of, like, a lot of weird choices that they could have done differently. And Nora notes that Umbrella Chronicles did away with the young version of Marcus, and it helped a lot with its flow.
Yeah. That's one thing I disagree with, because there's like this little mystery aspect with the young Marcus. Right before you fight him at boss fight, he pukes up a bunch of lesions, and he has the most absolute look of shock and terror on his face.
Yeah,
and that's not in any other version. And I just always wondered, like, did that Queen Leech take over his personality? Did he realize he's not him and he's fucked? Like, I love that, but like, it's not in any other version at all.
Yeah,
and I hated that.
I was taking screenshots at one point of that cutscene. There's a lot like you can miss in a few frames, like that transformation. And we don't get a lot of like really detailed transformations on screen in Resident Evil. A lot of them like it cuts away or something, and it's a really cool visual, I think. So I do like that transformation. Like you can see antenna growing out of his head and his skin melting, and it's really gruesome.
Yeah, but was like the singing opera shit really necessary? Like,
yeah, that maybe the better thing would have just been a better portrayal of young Marcus instead of just cutting him completely.
You know what? Maybe Marcus listened to that type of opera music while working on the leashes in the lab. So it was mimicking the opera that it heard.
That's really interesting. Good point.
Well, from a science standpoint, and like when you're researching on live subjects, be it human, pets, cats, any animal you're allowed to research, that is actually something that they will do to keep them calm. They'll play music, and they'll get used to that music. So whenever that music plays, they know to expect that they might get hurt and probed and prodded. So that could work very well if you wanted to go from like a realism, scientific explanation of why he's singing.
I've never even thought of that. That's cool.
I'm not going to go because I'm going to watch my words very carefully on what I think.
No, you can give your opinion. I'm just joking. I'm not gonna censor you. I just say I don't want you to feel like you're gonna offend me or anything. Like if it's about 7 or anything like that. I'm just joking.
It is about 7.
I'm just joking when I get upset. I'm not.
So I feel like RE7's storyline should have played out differently, but that's just me. I'm just an individual in a bigger pond, I guess. I feel like I would have liked RE7 and RE8 a lot more if the infection was virus-based, because that's one thing I do love about the Resident Evil series, the mutations that the viruses give the subjects, rather than having RE7 and RE8 derived from mold. I think the mold storyline is a bit insipid. Like in my head, it's much more interesting to think about things like, oh, the virus in 7 was a mixture of T. Veronica and G virus. That would explain the affected plants and the infected bugs, and not to mention the multiple eyes on Jack and his constant mutation up until the end of Zoe DLC. And Lucas's final form was kind of reminiscent of like G Birkin and or Nemesis or a Tyrant. Like instead of just saying and chalking it up to mold, full stop, like it does nothing for me. And I feel like, I know ER, you feel differently and I respect your opinion, but like that is just how I feel. Like if it was virus based, I would have liked it a little bit more.
I was actually going to say that I can relate to that opinion, in that I've shared it a lot, like in Resident Evil 4. That's how I used to really feel strongly in that I didn't like that Plaga just kind of showed up out of nowhere and could mutate things, and that'd be much more interesting, like if there was some sort of connection to what came before, and the idea that Progenitor is kind of the origin of everything in the series, or like everything is relying on its ability to remake life. So I could totally get that perspective. I can understand it completely, and I do think that it'd be cool if there was some sort of virus connection, and there might be, because they said that in one of the interview things that it was virus powered.
Nora says there is a bit that the molded are created as a result with some virus infusion. Does it say what type of virus, or?
No, all it says is that the mold is virus powered. If it was anything, I'd say it'd be like T. Veronica or something, because HCF or the rival org was involved with development.
But HCF was the Hive Host Capture Force. I feel like they were just transportation at this point, and I didn't get to include it, and I don't mind not including it. But one of my favorite organizations probably would have been the HCF, because I like the idea of the Hive Host Capture Force. Like, is it Host Hive Capture Force or Hive Host Capture Force?
It's both.
I mean, like, which one comes first?
I don't think it matters. I think it's just
Hive.
Hive.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so like I like the idea of the HCF capturing BOWs. Like, it's a shame that they kind of disappeared off the face of the map after Code Veronica, and like I don't really count the mention in RE7 because it was just that, it was just a mention in the document. I felt like they had a little more clout in Code Veronica, like a presence. At the end of RE7, for like a split second, I thought that Blue Umbrella was the HCF coming to collect Ethan because he was now a host for the mold. So I was like, oh, the Hive Host Capture Force, they're capturing Ethan and just posing as like some other organization coming in to get him.
I can see why that would be a disappointment to see that, especially since the Redfield thing.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, Reen, because when that guy goes, I'm Redfield, he had a different voice, different person, all that. And Chris is known worldwide for being a superhero-like figure. So all you'd have to do was say, I'm Chris Redfield, and they'd probably trust you a lot more than, you know, my name is Jack Daniels or some random other name.
But like Chris in RE5, when Sheva said, it's an Ona, Redfield. He said, Chris, please. So why would he introduce himself as Redfield to someone if he said in RE5 himself that call me Chris, please?
That is weird.
And
he's never referred to himself as Redfield, so it is kind of jarring.
Yeah, and so I remember when he took his helmet, like, okay, my sister and I had joked in the very beginning before playing RE7 that it would be funny if Chris dropped down in a helicopter and saved Ethan at the end, okay? And then when that helicopter is hovering at the end and that guy drops down, my sister and I are like, please don't tell me. And then he took the helmet off and was like, Redfield. And then the credits rolled. My sister and I were like kind of just staring into the void, and we were like, I hope that's a first name. Because I did not like that model at all. And like, I really feel like they added Chris's presence last minute to tie in Ethan's plight to the Resident Evil series. They proved that they could get the model right in Village. So them having a really weird model in 7, I feel like it was just a little bit of an excuse because they added him last minute.
He is in really old concept art, but I could see how you'd think that. But it's not like an unreasonable reaction to have.
Are you eating?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Nora says the HCF is the USS of the World Xenobiology Corporation. Is that right? WXC?
Yeah.
Oh, Rodney said it was Chris. She says based on dev docs, he was going to follow the footsteps of Ethan tracking him. Where was this included, Nora? Because they had a question.
In the $15 file you can buy for RE8.
Is there an English version of that, or is it just a Japanese version?
I think there's an English version because I'm pretty sure that's why Andrew bought Resident Evil 8.
Yeah, I have it.
Okay.
I own it too.
Okay.
Yeah, but I didn't buy the DLC.
But
I bought the fucking game, and then the DLC I found out after.
Okay, but see, that's the thing. I didn't know that Ethan was he an electrician or a technician or something?
He was a systems engineer.
I remember getting an email, like an ambassador email from Resident Evil.net or whatever it used to be, and it said, "What is Ethan's profession?" And it gave me those 3 choices, and I stared at it very long, and I was just like, where is that information? I had to go look it up myself. I was like, yeah, see, exactly. The guy that was just like, how am I supposed to know what Ethan is? Where is that included? And then I was like, oh, but it is unfortunate that some guides come out in Japan, they never make it for U.S. users or whatnot, who don't speak Japanese or can't translate. So, again, Project Umbrella is great for people who don't expand, I guess, outside America or United States or something in English or in a different language. But I kind of wish that Capcom would take a little more pride and have a little more faith that in the Western fans and translate some of these for us in the West instead of just keeping it in Japan.
It'd just be too much work for them. I'll just use Konami as an example. Konami has tons of exclusive lore and their Japanese guys for Silent Hill, but Silent Hill in Japan was always it was never as popular as it was in America, where Resident Evil was massively popular in Japan, almost more so than us, because they get all these theme parks and shit, restaurants and whatnot. Silent Hill never got that. Silent Hill got that in America. We had theme parks and stuff for Silent Hill, but we still never got those guides. So they probably just don't want to spend the extra money to do that.
I feel like it might be like a 3rd deal where the third party contacts Cap, because it was this Germany company who kept doing the novels. They did the Perry and then Rose Blanc to Liberty and Umbrella Chronicles novels. So yeah, I feel like it's less about Capcom and more about people approaching them saying, we want to translate this for you.
Reen, I don't think any of that was petty or offensive.
No, yeah, it was really good as well.
Okay.
I even agree on a lot of it, or at least I understand it, and part of me kind of is inside of me is going well, yeah, she has a point.
Yeah, but I just don't like to state my opinion sometimes because it's my opinion. Other people have other opinions, and I respect other opinions. So I don't want to put mine out there if it's a different opinion than somebody else, because then I want to avoid a clash.
Yeah, but that's
I get that, but we're all friends here, and
are we then?
Yeah. Rodney, are you a friend or are you a foe?
But there's actually quite a few areas I wish would have played out differently. But ultimately, I'm not the type of person that would kind of dwell with it. I'll just kind of accept it's I wish Tricell stuck around. I've always been vocal about that. You get this build up where it specifically states they're untouchable. They can't be hurt. They can't be taken down. Each branch is its own company. And then 2 games later, they're dead. That sucks, but it's whatever. So that's basically all I really have to say about it. Like, I just don't really want to dwell with that stuff because it can kind of ruin the franchise for you if you dwell on what all the cut content stuff or the cut directions that they had. Like, as much as I love Chris as a character, they wanted him to die in 6 at one point. Part of me kind of wish they'd done that. That would have made that game a lot more better, in my opinion, because I do love it, but it would have been better.
You know what? Me
more
too.
people.
Like, I am a Chris fan, like a really big Chris fan, but I do feel like perhaps it wouldn't have been so bad if he had died in RE6, because it feels like if he died like via the underwater sea lab in the water, it's kind of like a juxtaposition of Wesker dying in fire. So like Chris dies by water, Wesker died by fire, and like they were opposites. And I feel like that would have had like symbolic meaning, and I wouldn't have minded Piers carrying the torch. And I feel like they really snubbed Piers. I liked Piers. I think he had a lot of potential. As much as a Christian fan as I am, like, I would not have minded seeing him not make it in RE6.
One thing that I kind of don't mind about that is I really thought they were going to kill Chris or retire him, because like even in the cutscene he says, I want to retire. They kind of subverted my expectations by the end, even though in retrospect it's obvious that they would kill off the side character and not the, but I also understand why, they just kind of like keeping him along just for the sake of keeping him along, and when they could have ended it. I'm also a lot like Rodney in that I just kind of take what we get and I try to enjoy it.
If you had to remove one numbered title and one spin-off, what would you choose?
So
don't say 7.
I'm not. I'm going to surprise you again. I was going to say 0, but now I might change to 7 because you just interrupted me. Yeah, simply because I think it'll allow Capcom to go back and tell a prequel story, because I think there's a lot of potential in the prequel of this. Like, I still want to see like Raccoon City in its prime and stuff, and I want to see Bravo Team, what happened to them. Yes, I think there's a lot of potential there in prequels. So removing 0 wouldn't be a bad choice for me. As far as spin-offs go, I'd probably say Umbrella Corps, even though like Reen mentioned earlier, I also enjoy the story of it, but for similar reasons to 0, I think a lot can be done with that story, only better and more relevant.
I agree with that. Because if you describe the plot of Umbrella Corps to somebody, your mind will go to like a Splinter Cell chaos theory type game, or more stealth-based Tom Clancy game than you would with, slip and slide snake simulator PvP action.
I know what you mean. The crawl on your belly was a bit
sketchy,
awkward. Yeah.
I didn't even consider the idea that if we're removing one, then we get to there's the potential for it to be replaced. And so with that in mind, I agree that like Umbrella Corps, there's so much they could have done with that concept, and I really don't want that, like the things it introduced, to not exist in the universe anymore. Like it would change a lot of my current perceptions of the series and tie into Blue Umbrella and stuff. But if it could be explored better, that would be great. But if I had to remove a main game, it would probably just be one of the reimaginings. Not because I dislike them, but just because less would be lost, because we already have the original,
Yeah. Okay, I'm so sorry. The numbered title I would remove is RE7 and that fake field model. Only because 85% of that game was fake field to me. Was Chris to me, but then since they used that really weird fake field model, it dashed all my hopes. So I would say remove that one. And like, I don't know, I feel like I can live with 8, and if 7 didn't exist and there was a gap between it, I wouldn't feel much of anything if it was not there. So
I can feel the
just crying in the corner.
Spreading.
Oh, please don't cry. And the one spin-off I would remove is Resistance, because I would have much preferred an Outbreak remake. It felt like it should have been Outbreak, but then it wasn't Outbreak, and like it really felt like Resident Evil 3R was a $29.99 game, and the rest we paid for was Resistance, and that just left me feeling a little bit bitter because I didn't want Resistance at all.
Well, according to the Xbox Marketplace, that's exactly what you were paying for, because it breaks it down.
Really? Okay.
Like, a part of the price for Resident Evil 8 was supposed to be reversed, too. But as far as I know, that never came out.
They keep saying that it's still going to, but it's really weird at this point. It could be like an Auto Hero situation where they just delayed it till the end of the year. No.
Yeah, but like I would be fine removing Resistance, because it didn't bring anything to the table for me. But when we get down to one of the other questions, maybe it's not going to be covered in this part.
For me, I guess, I'm not the type of person who would want to remove a game, because I don't want to take away someone else that someone enjoys. Like, I hate the Mercenaries 3A to hell and back, But I know people who love that game to death, and I won't take that from them.
Me.
However, if I could remove a game and replace it with a better version, I probably would pick something like for a spinoff, like maybe either Outbreak or Confidential Report, because Confidential Report's got a very epic story that could have been a lot better in a console game instead of being a chopped up 4-part cell phone game with a turn-based combat system that's a complete total ass. It could have been a lot better. Or like with Outbreak, with all the stuff that they originally planned for it, that could have been replaced with that or something. For number titles, I can't really think of something I would want to see removed and replaced with a better version. Because if I was to remove Resident Evil 3 Remake, I'd probably keep the same basic story, but let's make all the characters different, because you can do that and it'll probably fit fine. Like Carlos don't act like Carlos at all. Tyrell don't act like Tyrell. Nikolai don't act like Nikolai. None of the characters act like they did in other portrayals from a whole bunch of different ways. And besides a few nods, you could just easily change their names. You're replacing them with a spin-off or something. I had a big in-depth conversation with Andrew about this probably last year. I just got done saying, Resident Evil 3 Remake's characters are so different. You can give them different names. You have a good spin-off. And if you hack the game and go out of bounds, there's roads and roads and roads fully rendered with fully decorated environments and props that you never fucking see, including dead bodies too.
And we have reached the conclusion to part 1 of our Perspectives podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed listening. Part 2 will be soon to follow. Until then, this has been Reen, Ark, Newsbot, ER, USSCommand, and Nora. This is the Digest team signing out. See you soon.
Yeah, what about that? Can you hear that?
Yeah. Now you're so far away, come back.
You can hear that?
Yeah. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
Compared to the other games, it's just
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh.
What's it called again? Yeah.
These nuts.
Okay.
Somebody get him off the air.
He said okay.
Question number 2. Is Resident Evil your favorite series? Who wants to go first?
How does it compare to other series?
Yep, I just most that off. My bad, okay. Let me try again. Take 3.
I'm down for 15, but whatever.
Okay, 15 it is then. Okay, so I will say...
Alright, 16 we go.
Yeah, okay.
And besides a few nods, you could just easily change their names. So I guess, remove one of those remasters. My controller died without me messing with it. But
okay, I was about to be like, was that it? Okay, so are we ready to start podcast episode 2?
No.
2. Oh, Rodney!
Yeah.
Be positive!
Hey, I'm a bit, I got a nice buzz going. I'm out of alcohol. So
Alright, okay. That's the thing. Let's do it.
I did that. It shows up. When I click on it, nothing happens.
Did you try screaming like a chimpanzee and bashing your computer?
Spoilers.
Yeah, okay, I'll cut that out.
No.
The second part about Evelyn, I'll just say remember from the village is really good.
I think if they're listening to this, they probably played Village.
Maybe we
Dumbledore dies. Dumbledore dies.
No.
But yeah, other examples
Sorry,
of
I got to mute.